This video is brought to you by Midway USA. Support the channel by choosing Midway for your shooting and outdoor supplies.
Have you ever gone out on a date? You're with the perfect girl, the perfect restaurant. The food has been fantastic, conversations have been lively, everything is perfect. You go all the way from the main course and end up at dessert. And after that, you're going to go back. And at that moment, you call her the name of your ex. And it all falls apart. This runs kind of like that. I'll tell you when the emotional damage commences. We'll see you then.
Did the Niner Mark II ever make it to the PA course in that configuration?
It did not. But technically, now that we're running the Sureshot Armament Group chassis, and this is the Russian Sureshot Armament Group chassis that got kind of took its while to come in. That's why it came in after. But it's technically free-floated the rail, or the barrel system. But I specifically did this, Josh, so we can have lasers. Ding!
150.
Oh, sorry. Ready?
Yeah. Impact! Impact! Ah, yes, casual Viz laser. Henry's only using his eagle eyes and his laser. 200. Impact, dead center. Nice. 250. Bottom right corner. Give it a little bit more elevation. Impact.
Okay.
Last shot was on the bottom edge. 300. Dead center. Dead center. Nice.
Nice.
Okay, I'm on at 350. Impact. Impact.
Nice.
Okay, I'm on at 400. Okay, that was an impact. It was on his neckline, okay?
Okay.
Nice. Okay, we're on at 450. Impact. Impact. Okay, I'm on at 5.
Are you ready for the emotional damage? Here we go.
That one appeared to have sailed a bit high. Okay, just short on the plate. It could have been in there. Just off the left edge, good elevation. That's the elevation. That one sailed significantly high, full target high, good windage. I didn't see the impact on that. Okay, that's high by 3 or 4 inches over his head and on the left edge. High over his head, a full half a target high on that one. Just short. Okay, that was off the right and high, right by half a target, high by maybe a quarter target.
Josh, I feel like I'm just chasing it now.
Okay, well, let's pick a point and see if you can hold. I heard an impact on that.
Okay.
No flex in the target, definitely heard the impact. Yep, same on that one.
Okay.
Kind of wild, actually.
We're going to fumble on range a little bit. We're going to speculate a little bit. But if you check out this timestamp, or at least know that during this timestamp, we'll talk about exactly what went wrong. I'll see you there.
What do you think happened at the end? I was chasing it a little bit. I probably shouldn't have been chasing it. But, so I will say, as I stepped out, first of all, it was a giant step up going from the single dot to the ACSS, because the dots actually corresponded fairly well. And unlike previously, where we didn't have a magnifier, this time using a magnifier on it, I mean, it was just like using an LPVO.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I probably shouldn't have been chasing the rounds as much, because I think...
Yeah, I mean, the wind is significant enough today that it could have... I mean, there was some elevation-related stuff, but...
there was elevation-related stuff, but that was me chasing the round. So that was on me with the elevation, because I wasn't holding to the ACSS grid. At the very end, those last two shots, I was using that last dot on the ACSS grid, and it sank it.
Yeah. So do you think maybe the first one where like it sent high, maybe it was just not a great shot, or maybe the rifle...
I don't feel like I was doing anything differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a cone of deviation, right? So maybe it was just a bit high on the first one, and then we immediately dropped low and stopped using the ACSS grid.
Halfway through that last string, I did look over to the flag, and I did see it dip and then raise and then dip and then raise. And the reason I took the pause was because I was actually waiting for the wind to blow at the previous wind to where it was almost at full staff, not quite full staff. I know that's counterintuitive to people, probably would want to wait till it was calm, but I was actually trying to wait for it to match the wind I was using, the hold I was using before, to sink that shot. But I don't know, how many shots did it was probably high 20s.
Yeah, because that I think we had that mag loaded to 28.
Yeah, no, it was 28. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, you aced it all the way to 500, and then you shot like 5 or 6 extra shots at 500.
Yeah, it's a pity. All right, well, there's a lot for us to talk about on this. I really wish that last target I did, because I have an emotional bond to this rifle, you see. But it's a pretty slick shooting rifle still, but I can already tell you that the barrel is... we've shot it a lot.
Is it on its last legs?
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's looking like a burnt out barrel already. But anyways, we shall catch you guys at the debrief.
Привет, товарищ. You must have caught me admiring my flowers. I was only about to fertilize them, the best way I know. The Russian way. I hope you're enjoying the show so far, because shows like this, they're brought to you, of course, by Slate Black Industries, but most importantly, they're brought to you by the patrons of Patreon and Utreon. That's right. This group of comrades, they support us financially, intellectually, but most importantly, emotionally. So today I'd like to invite you. Come, join us, become one of us. Together, we are going to start the revolution in small arms development. But if you cannot, we understand. We will be just as happy to see your comments in the comment section below. But for now, I have to finish fertilizing, and we will get on with the show.
Welcome into the debrief. This was the AK9er Mark III on the practical accuracy course. And Henry, wow, you shot an ace clean course with an AK with 55 grain ball up through 450. And I was sitting there like, holy crap, he's going to clear this clean with the freaking AK. And then the wheels like came flying off the bus at 500 and a couple different things stacked on top of each other. So before we get into any of like the standard debrief or talking about this new setup of the rifle and what you've changed, what you've done, and how it's impacted your ability to shoot at range, I do want to talk about 500 specifically and talk through the different things that we believe stacked on top of each other.
Yep. So that was a human error at 500. All right. So if you look at the suppressor right here, you look really closely in the back. There's some carbon marks spraying backwards. I didn't realize this when we were shooting practical accuracy, but typically before I shoot the AM5 on any rifle, I always tighten it before I shoot it. That session, I did not tighten it because it was a rifle I threw in a bag with the suppressor on the night before. And I must not have tightened it enough that night. And so as we shot it, the suppressor must have shot loose. And you could see the carbon fouling coming out through the back. And you'll see at the 500-yard target, a lot of those shots just didn't make it well. It's in the vicinity, it didn't make it to the target. And so you can see the effects of a loose suppressor on the end of the barrel. This particular day, before I had packed out, and usually we pack everything out the night before, at home, I had threaded the can onto the rifle and just thrown it into the back of the truck. Now, I distinctly remember now, when I threaded the can on the barrel, I just put it there for logistical reasons, so I wouldn't have a loose can sliding around somewhere else. It was on the rifle, and we'd be able to shoot there. I did not tighten it. I threaded it on. I did not tighten it.
And as we were sitting there during the debrief on range, going, man, what the heck just happened? That didn't really cross our minds to consider. I later on in the day went and picked up the Niner and sort of intuitively just checked the can. And it was about a full half a hand turn loose, and that was just to get it snug, never mind like actually trying to cinch it. Yeah. So the can, we hypothesize, over the course of that run, loosened up, and by the end of it, was unfortunately loose while we were shooting at the 500-yard target. So that was piece number one. A loose can is going to cause, especially if it's shifting or moving, is going to cause some deviation in where the rounds are going.
Yeah.
But that's not expressly, I would say, like what happened, because you told us on range, and you told me on range, we were trying to like figure out what was going on. I feel like I'm chasing this, and like I'm not seeing the rounds go where I want, and I'm adjusting all over the place. And you paused for a minute and then finally reset, and then you center punch twice, right? So even in spite of the fact that the can may have shifted to zero, once you were able to figure out where the zero was, and you picked a consistent aiming point and sort of stuck with it, you were able to hit this target twice in a row. But it goes to show that it was still capable of achieving the hits, and some of it was human error imparted, not just on the mechanical error on the can, but actually within the context of the shooting as well.
Yeah, I mean, without potentially damaging the can, like I am not going to loosen the can and try to shoot it, because this is a Ron Allen era AEM5 suppressor that works with a rifle. I don't know how much of that the sequential hits were luck, because that also could potentially be a part of it. You just landed 2 rounds really close to each other,
Sure.
even with a loose can. Maybe. It's just unfortunately, when the can was loose and I didn't know it, as they say, bad data in, bad data out, right? Mm-hmm. If I don't get a good input on it, and in my mind, the can was tight, and I saw that kind of a deviation, I'm going to adjust to that deviation without knowing that once I move over, the loose can potentially would be impacting in a different location because that shot circumference has opened up significantly. And then at that point, I'm just trying to adjust off of the wider shot group rather than adjusting off of a human error that was actually placed into it. So I could be doing everything right without the knowledge that the rifle is, at this point, no longer a 3 MOA rifle. It's turned into a 6 MOA rifle.
Exactly.
And I'm
so
just
you're moving
chasing,
around that 6 MOA cone of deviation, trying to account for what's going on, thinking that the cone is much smaller, and as a result, you're throwing misses without any sort of consistency.
And it gets worse. It gets worse because it's not at that point when you have a 6 MOA cone of deviation and you start chasing it, you could have one at this end and the other at the top end, and then you have two other cones, 6 MOA cones. And those issues, they just stack those tolerances. That compounds itself in making it into a worse scenario in the long run. I think
Absolutely.
Did we stop and try to squeeze a few rounds just to see where it was landing, and then
No, you paused. Like, you were like, man, I am just all over that. Like, I don't understand why. And it's like, okay. And I think my suggestion, which is what you were going to do anyway, but my suggestion is, okay, pick a point, just relax, hold where you think it should be, and let's see what happens. And you hit twice in a row right after that.
Josh, I feel like I'm just chasing it now.
Okay, well, let's pick a point and see if you can hold. I heard an impact on that.
That's right, because I went back to the original hold at that point.
Yeah.
And I just went for it.
So highest probability of getting your hits was the original hold even with the wider cone of deviation.
Correct.
So
yeah.
The third piece that was stacked on at 500, and this is important, I think like your second shot was actually a hit. I called it as being short because I saw water splash, which was a puddle in front of the target.
Yep.
And in actuality, what I think happened, and again, some of it's sort of cut out, but we were talking on range, and I said, yeah, it was either short or maybe it was a hit and it was on the bottom edge. And then your next shot was like perfect elevation, just a windage problem. So, basically we hit it 3 times, but I think that probably like contributed also somewhat, because then you have bad data from me trying to adjust on where the impact may have been short and then causing further issues.
Yeah.
So all that to say, what would have been like an extremely clean run, obviously like things happen. And it goes to show you that when you're shooting at distance, even though 500 isn't that far away by like, precision or long range standards, any little thing that goes wrong, you're going to see it. And the further you go out on range, it's going to impact you. But I want to draw this all back, Henry, to the fact that up through 450 with effectively like a 2.5 to 3 MOA gun, you were able to clear C-zone size targets without any misses in what was like a decent amount of wind, again, with a Kalashnikov with ball ammo. And that's pretty awesome. And so what I want to sort of draw back to is what were the driving components that made that possible in terms of beyond sort of development of skill and training and the rest of it. Like, what were the unique components of the firearm itself and the overall setup that allowed that to be achievable?
Well, you see, Josh, the base component is premium Russian steel used in the barrel. Okay.
All jokes aside, the only other rifle, or the only rifle so far that has been able to clear through, I really don't want to add to FUD lore, but this is where we are, is a long stroke AK style operating system, the SG550 with iron sights and 55 grain balls. So go figure at this point, right? Obviously, SG550 is a Western rifle. It is precision machined by SIG. The Kalashnikov Concern AK, essentially the AK101 or 102, this is an in-between a 101 and 102 platform that we have here. is not the same kind of machine, precision machine. I mean, it's good manufacturing compared to any other AKs. Like, you pick up any Saiga-based AK, it's so much smoother than the other stuff. And the barrels are fine. They're chrome line, hammer forged barrels. But the big things that we did differently here were the Sureshot Armament Group chassis that somewhat free floats the front end. This particular one is the slim version, and this particular one is the Russian version. So the mounting is a little bit different between the Russian and the American version. I would say that the American version is a little bit more user-friendly on the installation process. It's specifically designed to where American users would not have to go through the Russian experience of mounting it. And if anyone's mounted any Zenitco products, you know exactly what I'm talking about, the Russian experience. But between the Zenitco and the Sureshot, I think the biggest thing comes down to weight. Weight is something that the Sureshot 110% beats out the Zenitco. And weight here is relevant because as soon as you start mounting force multipliers onto your rifle, you're going to add weight to the rifle. So if you have a heavy base rifle, you're going to have a brick of a rifle at the end of the day. Josh, you have a fully Zenitco'd out AKS-74.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
It is heavy.
It's a pig.
It's heavy.
It's a pig, yeah. Which, if you're shooting, if your goal is to have zero recoil, that is it.
Yeah.
But then, for the Niner's sake too, the AEM5 is actually fairly heavy of a suppressor, and so that also makes it up on the other end, to where once I have the suppressor mounted on there, it almost feels just a hint lighter than Josh's Zenitco'd out AKS-74. But yeah, that's I think that's where it is when it comes to the Sureshot Armament Group chassis. Like a lot of people focus on the fact that it is, it's somewhat free floated because it actually has a barrel clamp at the very end, so it's not technically free floated. I think the biggest focus on the Sureshot Armament Group stuff, whether it's the American or the Russian one, is the fact that it is super lightweight. But then also, as you see with the laser, it doesn't flex with the laser mounted. So I'm able to mount a laser and stay zero.
Impact.
Yeah.
But the Sureshot Armament chassis helps me use better optics on the system. And the optical system that I use was actually a pretty viable combat optic system that you could be using. The ACSS version of the Holosun with the BDC coming down, but then also with a magnifier that has the rangefinder on it.
Yeah, so we actually have also done like a full standalone video on the particular optic that Henry's talking about here. And I couldn't agree more. My experience also is, especially with the addition of a magnifier, that optic is very capable on the distance course out to 3, 4, even potentially out to like 500 with a red dot when you have the magnifier added. Henry, to your point, is it as great as an LPVO for that purpose? I would say no, but it has the inherent advantages of being lighter, and when you strip the magnifier, like significantly lighter and probably faster up on close range stuff. So if your goals are working, close range predominantly with the ability to extend out, it's a fantastic option.
Yeah. It's one of those things, it may not be flat range nice, but at the same time, the abilities that it brings, it's one of those things that you would experience and you would actually come to appreciate if you were ruck marching in the field, going through difficult terrain and stuff like that. So I really, really like the combination. I specifically wanted to load out this iteration of the Niner to accommodate this type of sighting system, stuff that makes sense in the field. And to be honest, I didn't expect for the BDC to be able to clock that closely to 55 grain ball, but it absolutely does.
Yeah.
Very, very closely. Yep. So I think that was one of the biggest contributions for it, making it easier for the shooter pushing out.
Right. Now, one of the things you referenced was on the Sureshot rail system was the ability to add lasers due to, obviously like the rigidity of that system and whatnot. And one of the things which we did on this run is you actually had your vis laser turned on to sort of act as a demo of a particular component here that we wanted to talk about, and that is the Sureshot group rail being able to run the laser, but also it brings up something interesting, which is laser zeroing. And even though most of the time, in fact, I would say like 99% of the time, the laser is not going to be run in a vis capacity. It's an interesting demonstration of how zeroing takes place and how what you were running, a parallel zero, has the laser offset from the bore because that is how it sits. It sits offset from the bore. But as you can see, the laser is actually, off to the right of the target, on the right side of the target at 100, and then increasingly off and high as Henry goes out, showing how much difference there is between where the point of aim would be if Henry were pointing the gun literally in a straight line versus the bullet drop. So very cool and interesting component there. And I think, Henry, you said you run the parallel zero as opposed to converging?
Yeah. So what Josh is talking about. I mean, why don't you go talk about the parallel zero versus converging before I talk about my zeroing?
Okay, sure. So with the parallel zero, we basically, the laser sits, if you have your bore line, the laser usually sits above the bore and then off to the side. So you have a deviation, much like with your optic, where there is, quote unquote, height over bore with the optic, for example. So you have the same deviation with your laser. The laser is a straight line beam. And so you have to set it at a given place on a target. And you can set what is called either a parallel or a converging zero. Parallel means it follows along down the side of the bore, whereas converging is that at some point the laser actually intersects the bore, which means before that point the round would be landing to the left of the laser, and then after that point the round would be landing to the right of the laser because the laser is basically coming out at an angle. So it's an interesting phenomenon. It's an interesting option choice. Some people like to run it where the laser is like pointed at a specific distance, say 25 or 50 meters, and before that, the laser's on one side, it's zeroed directly at 50 with exactly where the laser is, and then afterwards the round lands on the other side. And some people prefer to run it parallel, where it's always going to be that the laser is going to be, say, on the right side with the rounds impacting to the left of that point in terms of where they're going to land. So, Henry, talk about why you choose then the parallel.
Obviously, it's because I'm trying to direct aircraft fire at long distances, and I don't want it to deviate from my reticle, right? It's just out of habit. I like to know that if I'm aiming with a laser, that I basically hold it off left. Whatever distance it is, I can adjust the elevation at that point. But really, it's just out of habit. A lot of things I think that we do are out of habit, and if we change it from habit, it takes more brain power to process that. And if I were to push that as a converging zero, I think it would take me a lot more time, a lot more brain power to process, hey, at this distance, I need to be mindful to aim left or right of the target. And I just don't like that. I like just being very consistent with where I'm trying to aim, because I know the laser sits to the top right of the bore. That's really it. But I specifically wanted to turn the laser on for this. I didn't know if it would show, but holy cannolis, the green full power like Russian laser absolutely showed all the way, even at 300. You still
it's like
saw
off in the top of the berm. Yeah.
But that, I mean, yeah, but isn't that interesting that it shows how much you really are arcing the projectile in, and that's only at 300. Really, that's still at 0.0 or point blank range for us to shoot. and already the your 100 meter dot is at the top of the berm. Past that, it was just way on top, and you couldn't even see where the dot was.
Yeah. And again, as a point of reminder here, like if you're thinking about that and going, wait, why that doesn't sound right? Like I've been taught, chest, head, hat, like that should be head. You have to remember these targets are quite a bit smaller than full torsos, right? So quite a bit smaller than full torso. So you're not getting an accurate proportion of a humanoid on the target out there. So that's part of what you're seeing demonstrated by that as well. It's much smaller, and so it's not. The chest head hat doesn't exactly work for the target sizes we're shooting, right?
But if we were to translate this to, let's say, when you would mostly use the laser, which is nighttime shooting, right? Let's say you wanted to switch a laser on and engage with a 100 meter zero, you wanted to engage the 200 meter target. As you see, it translates fairly well as long as you have the resolution in your night vision. Okay, you could take a target at that distance. But then, how much more difficult it becomes as you step it out when people are talking about shooting, longer distance. Why nighttime the distances really shorten up a lot is because you lose a lot of those advantages that you would get from daylight aiming using a ballistically cammed reticle. And then at that point, which is why using your clip-ons all of a sudden becomes a lot more important if you're taking longer distance targets at night.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I mean, the Niner, it's been a staple in the stockroom here for a while, in the armory. You finally sort of just put it into Mark III variety. It's obviously performed quite well. I think, obviously, people are going to want to see a bit of redemption, Henry, in terms of seeing if it can clean the course, right, with that 500, without the human error involved there. I mean, what do you say? I mean, I think that this certainly ran well enough that we should try to run it down on the speed course.
Yeah.
The self-guided speed course. What do you say?
Yeah, well, no doubt. I think now when we're talking about the speedway course, the one issue that you're going to run into it is that the ACSS kind of bottoms out at the 500.
Ooh, so that 650 is going to be a challenge.
Correct. So that 650 is going to be a challenge, and then the 725 is potentially a bridge too far for this thing to cross, and purely because of optical reasons. But at the same time, you set these things up with a little bit of give and take. Do you expect this thing to engage 700 meter targets? Or what is the probability of engaging 700 meter targets that you would require? And would you rather negotiate that with a sniper rifle instead? So those are questions that you need to ask. But if we're putting this into a speedway course, I think if today is any indication, I think the rifle, despite it being an AK, and I say that, because of how people talk about AKs, and also take it with a grain of salt that not every AK is the same. There are QC evidently is not nearly as big of a thing in AK producing countries. And I say that including American AKs.
Yeah. Yep.
So it really depends on the AK, but the potential that the system has to offer, and that I think has been the biggest thing for the Niner, was that it's a project born from an abandoned AK, essentially. And as we moved on through the era, we've discovered new components, we've discovered new ideas that help not only prolong the AK's existence and relevance in our world, but it actively enhances the AK into becoming something that it was not designed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are.
And with that, guys, this is a friendly reminder that if you're still with us, do all of those great YouTube things like, comment, subscribe. Make sure that notification bell is turned on. follow us over at 9H Podcasts. We're also over on Rumble, and if you're feeling particularly inclined, you can also join us over on Patreon or Utreon. And until next time, we'll see you on the range.
Oh, that was satisfying.
Dude, that double at 150, bro.
Yeah.
Patron 16, this is Steel 96, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green, how copy, over.
Steel 96, this is Patron 16, roger, over. 16, Steel 91, 1 pack, green, green, over. This is Patron 16, roger, over. 16, Steel 92, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.